Okay, so in this video, I'm going to go over two different ways to do preprocessing that doesn't use the runNIRSPreproc script. That is the script that just has pop-ups and you don't have to do any inputs or anything like that. So for those that don't like all the pop-ups or they keep getting errors and they don't know why, I would recommend going into the helper script. And what you'll notice is that there are two different ways to preprocess outside of this runNIRSPreproc, which is manual preproc and then also function preproc. So I'm going to show you how first to do the manual preproc. And so what this is you're literally inputting everything that would normally go into this runNIRSPreproc. So instead of getting pop-ups, you're just typing in all of the things you want to do. So as an example, let's go back to the data. So let's say I want to do a single subject multi-scan. I'm just going to delete these preprocessed files. And if you want to understand why I have some of these things in here, you can go to my other video that goes over the pop-up one, which is just the preprocessing with the runNIRSPreproc. But this is a single subject with multiple scans done with our NIRSport. So I'm going to go over here. So for my data prefix, it's going to be the data prefix for that data I was just looking at. It's SIM. So I'm going to type that in. Oops. So SIM. Just to note the difference, when you do runNIRSPreproc, you don't have to put it in the quotes or the apostrophes, but when you are running this manually, please make sure you do. You could also do this if you want. It doesn't matter. I just prefer the one. It looks cleaner. Alright, so I'm going to keep this as 0 as it's not a hyperscan. I just did a single. And I'm going to keep this as 1 as it was a multi-scan. For my auxiliary, I had 2 accelerometers. If I had none, I would just put 0, but let's keep that as 2. And then we have our choice of motion correction. So we have them all. I actually need to update this. I will. But for now, it's just baseline volatility that we're going to choose because it's fast. So I'll just keep that as 1. And then for device, you choose the device. So this was done with the NIRSport 2, or if you have a .NIRS file, you can put 2, or if it was done with the Scout, you do 1, and if you have a .snrf, you can enter 3. But if you do .snrf, please make sure that you have Homer 3 in your current directory. Alright, but it's 2, so that's fine. For my trim, I'm going to trim with my first trigger, so I'll just put 1. This here is asking that once I do my preprocessing, do I then want to do a channel loss check? So this will add an extra variable if I compile my data that tells me which channels I lost in every subject and every scan. So I'm going to say, yeah, let's do that. My D length is going to be every character after the data prefix, but before the name of the scan. So if we just take a look, so this is my first subject. So the data prefix is SIM, and then we have an underscore, 3 numbers, another underscore, and the scan name. So between the data prefix and the scan name, we have 5 characters. So my ID length is 5. If for some reason, let's say I didn't have like those underscores, then before my data or after my data prefix, before my scan name, it would just be 3 characters. But that's not what it looks like. So I'm just going to undo that. All right. Do I want to compile my data into one .map file? So when we preprocess, it outputs .map files for each subject and scan individually. But after I'm done, I can compile it all into one .mat, which makes it a little bit easier to work with analysis-wise. So I'm going to say yes, let's do that. Then it's asking me how many scans do I have. I can double check, which is 5. So 5 for all of my subjects. So I'm going to keep that as 5. If I'm compiling, do I want to compile the z-score or non-z-scored? I've mentioned this in a previous video, but I like to compile just the non-z-scored because I can z-score it pretty easily before analysis. And then channel rejection. So I don't recommend 1. That would keep oversaturated channels. Depends if you want to compare some stuff. I'm going to do 2, which is just to reject those noisy channels, but I might keep uncertain channels, which are channels that might have some noise left in it based on the change in variation. Alright, so now I have to actually specify my raw directory path. So that's for this folder here, the SIM. So a quick way to do this actually would just be going into that folder and then click on any of the subjects. If you have the PC, go to Properties, and you can just copy this. That's my lazy way of doing it. You also can just type it if you know the path, but I like to cheat it. All right, so those are all the manual inputs you need to do. So if you know your study really well, this might not be very hard, and you might prefer this manual input for preprocessing versus the runNIRSPreproc, where you keep getting all those pop-ups. So let's run this. So again, just like the runNIRSPreproc, if you don't have your folder and subfolders active, it's just going to say, do you want to make them active? And I'm going to say, yeah, add it to the path. And so great. So now we're preprocessing, just like if we had run the runNIRSPreproc with all the pop-ups. The reason why I've done this is that oftentimes when people are new to this pipeline, they'll run into a lot of errors because they don't necessarily understand what each of the pop-ups is exactly asking. I've tried to add as many comments as possible and make these videos so it's clear, but you can still run into some errors just because maybe you're entering something wrong, and this might be a little bit easier instead of having to continually answer those pop-ups, is to just subtly change some of these manual inputs. Alright, so we're done. Let's just double check. I have that pre-processed files here, and then I have that compile. I have my individual subjects with their individual scans, and the data. We can even double check this little compile here. So I've got deoxy and oxy. And it looks good. Right, so we have all our scans, we have our data, we have our time, triggers, auxiliary, sample rate, and then our lost channels per subject. So great. Alright, so that's using the manual input. So obviously for your own study, you're going to have to change this to be specific if it's a hyperscan or like how you collected the data, but I think that's pretty straightforward. So now let's look at what it would be like if we instead use the function. So this is if maybe you like some of those pop-ups, or maybe like you know these really well, but you don't want to have to like type in the data path or something like that. So this is only going to give you 3 pop-ups, and what you can do is run it as a function. But you will have to change all of these variables. So for like data prefix, so just as an example actually, let's do my hypermulti. So my data prefix here is HM. So I'm going to say, and I'll show you actually if we do this. So if I put it in the quotes, that should be fine. So this is a hyperscan, so I'm going to put 1. Also a multi-scan, so I'm going to put 1 again. So my motion correction, again, I need to update this, I will, but we're just going to do baseline volatility again. And my device is actually a 1 here, as this was with the NIRS Scout. So just so we can see, I don't have a .NIRS file or a .snrf, and that's because this was with the NIRS Scout, which is a bit older. And number of auxiliary is 0. So you do have to know some things about your study pretty well. Let's hit run. So now it's going to go, okay, where's your data? So I'm going to go here, HM NIRS. And now it's going to also ask all that compile information. So like run a channel loss. My ID length for this is 5. Compile my data. There's 3 scans. And my channel rejection. All right, then I get to choose. So like if I want to do trimming my data on the first trigger with a .mat or a spreadsheet, I think for this data, we could do let's do the spreadsheet just so you can see. So now it asks me, okay, where's that spreadsheet? And I'm going through this pretty quickly because I actually did go over this with the runNIRSPreproc video. So sorry if this is a bit quick. If you want a little bit more information about some of the things I'm selecting, you can go to that video and check it out. Or you can read all the notes on my GitHub, or all the notes on each one of these scripts. It's up to you on how you want to better understand some of these things. But as you can see, it's pre-processing just like it would if you did the manual, or just like it would if you did the runNIRSPreproc. These are just two different options if you don't like having to do those pop-ups. I find the pop-ups to be easy if you aren't running into errors at all. I think it's pretty quick and you don't have to like change a bunch of things. But yeah, I've had a couple people that have run into some errors, so I'm giving different options. You can run it as a function or just completely manual inputs. Alright, so let's go. So we got that pre-processed files now. And again, we have the subjects and, or the diodes, and then the subjects, and then the scans. And we have the compile. Then we also have like a CSV of just how many channels were lost. And if we want to take a look at that just real quick, again, so this is a bit bigger of a structure because it's a hyper multi. I put in the ID actually incorrectly, the ID length incorrectly. That's why I'm getting this underscore. The ID length for this one I think was a bit shorter. Oops. What did I put? Let's just double check. I must have put 4. Doesn't matter. It's still fine. We still know what the scan names are. We just have that little underscore in there. But yeah, so we have our subject 1 for all the diodes, and then we also have time and triggers and auxiliary, and then we have our subject 2 for all diodes and their time, trigger, and auxiliary, and our sample rate, and then the loss for all subject 1s and the loss for all subject 2s for all the diodes. So hopefully that makes sense. These are just different options depending on how you like to start that pre-processing. I personally like the runNIRSPreproc, but again, if you're running into a lot of errors, I would recommend using the manual or even like the function. So that's it for this one. This is a very short script, or just kidding, very short video.